to episode 309 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 18th of November 2024. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Evening.
Graham.
Hello from Yorkshire.
And Will.
Hello.
I think you mean A-up.
A-up.
Let's get straight on with our discoveries then. Will, PUP.
PUP is a very old tool, and I really am amazed I've never heard of it until recently. Its GitHub page has got updates from 10 years ago, and yet I only discovered it, I don't know, a couple of weeks back. The most recent update to it was about 2 years ago, so it hasn't been very well maintained, but perhaps it just works fine. The purpose of PUP is a bit like JQ, which maybe people don't know about, but JQ is a tool for parsing JSON files. You feed it a JSON file and then you use its kind of selector language to pull out bits of information you want from that file. PUP does that for HTML. So you can pipe a website into it and you can then select via CSS various elements of that page. And using its selector language, you can output just the things that you care about. And this is incredibly useful if you want to scrape a web page and pick out a particular word or field or, you know, a heading or all the headings or whatever it is you're looking for. It's just a really useful tool to quickly and easily pick out the information you want from a web page. Incredibly useful, and I'm frankly embarrassed that I've only just found out about it.
So you could, for example, use this to scrape a website and just get the content of the posts, for example, to maybe feed into your large language model.
Damn it.
I wonder how many people have actually used it for that.
The more I learn about companies is the more shonky scripts that exist that do all the donkey work for everybody.
So what did you use it for then, Will?
I was trying to scrape some pages off the Octopus website to pull out information that I wanted. Now, they have got an API, but not all of the information was in the API, so I thought I'd just try and scrape it off the web page.
This is Octopus, your energy supplier.
That's right, yeah.
And did it work then?
It worked enough. I kind of gave up on the project, really, but I think next time I need to scrape a web page, this is definitely where I'll go.
It's got a bit of a nicer, faster results than using Beautiful Soup with Python or whatever.
Yes, and that's exactly how I came to be here. Beautiful Soup is like my normal go-to way of doing these things. But every time I use it, I hate it a little bit more, and I still have to read the manual for it over and over and over again just to try and get it to do what I want. I found PUP to be a little bit faster.
Yeah.
For me to use, not to query, but to interact with.
It does look pretty decent, and it's a good way to sort of segment stuff off. It's quite cool. Like it.
And it looks like it's written in Go, so it must be easy to install then.
Yeah, absolutely. Go get, and then the GitHub page, and you're done.
Oh, not Rust. Oh, is it even really a good project then?
Well, let's see if there is one in Rust, shall we?
Rup.
There is already a PUP application written in Rust, but it's a task automation system. Not interested.
I'm sure RUP must exist somewhere. Graham, 8-Bit Workshop.
This is another well-established project, and I can't quite believe I've not heard of it. It's a web-based IDE, a development environment for old-style platforms, 8-bit platforms. They include old home computers like the Commodore 64 or the Atari 2600, but also arcade machines. And it's a unified user interface where you've kind of got a list of functions on the left, you've got the code in the middle column, and then an integrated emulator on the right. The whole thing's open source, so while it is through a web UI, you can also run it locally if you want to, and it's obviously harnessing many different projects to pull this into a single place. But it's mind-blowingly incredible if you're into this kind of thing. Choose like the Atari 2600, for example, and they include template assembler code, all really well commented for you to just immediately go in and change your own high score name or whatever you want to do. You'll see the output of the built binary running on an emulator on the right, and you can set interrupts and do all those kind of things you can do in an IDE on the left, and you can export the binary to run on the real hardware or on another emulator. And well, let me just open it up because there's so many things that it now supports. There's the early games consoles like the 2600, but also the Sega Master System, the ColorCovision and PC Engine, loads of arcade game platforms, computers like the Commodore 64, the Apple II, the Spectrum, and every one of these environments has been built to develop software on those things. It's really difficult to describe because they do it so well. You can't believe, you understand the effort that must have gone on behind the scenes to integrate all of this, but it just begs you to want to try and write some software for those old systems.
I can see myself losing a lot of time in this. Just the variety of stuff that's in there is great fun. And there's even a Z machine set up, so you could write good old Infocom adventures as well. Amazing.
Wow. Not only that, there's Verilog as well, and that was part of my university course to define, like, I think we had to define a UART chip at the time, but they're here and they're telling you how you build your own 8-bit game platforms from scratch. Wow. And the IDE is insane, the quality of it. Like, it's got even showing you, like, the clocks to the right-hand side of your code on the left and stuff. This is amazing. Wish I had this 25 odd years ago.
Yeah, the Atari 2600 view, for example, actually has the raw compiled assembler on the left. Then it has, I don't know what you'd call it, I can't remember now, the pre-compiled assembly language with the comments in the middle column. So you can see exactly what every command is doing. And then the emulator on the right, but then also you get a window with, I don't know what you'd call it, the stack, the registers on the CPU. And you can also introspect the memory in real time, the video RAM. You can do all those kind of things that you could like with an action replay in the 80s. And it's brilliant. It's open source and also funded in an interesting way in that the main developer has written books on developing software for many of these platforms. And you can buy the books through an integrated link, which is a pretty cool way of doing it. If you're interested in spending Christmas, writing assembly language for the Commodore 64, which I kind of do. I always wanted to do, but it's great. I also have to say a lot of trouble's gone into selecting the examples. There's lots of templates. They're really well documented, really well commented. So even if you just have a passing interest in 15 minutes, you can go in and change the value, and then seeing it running in the emulator on the right-hand side does kind of bring back some of those old memories of pressing a switch on an action replay and finding where the high score is and changing that value.
And to be able to do all of this in a browser is just extraordinary.
Yeah.
Phelim, 20-year anniversary of Half-Life 2.
Yeah, so I've a bit of an admission to make. The only Half-Life 2 I've ever played has been Gary's mod with Liam, where you get all the Steam and Valve, what they're called, artifacts, textures, whatever, where you can mess around with them on different levels.
Assets,
thank you. Yeah, that's the only Half-Life 2 I've ever played, much to my embarrassment. But there's a really cool documentary by Valve themselves. And it's quite cool to go through and look at. I haven't watched all of it yet. I haven't had a chance. It's about 2 hours long. And it's the first time I've seen a modern bit of footage of Gabe, but he looks very different than the picture I have in my head of what he looks like. So that was quite interesting. It's nice to see they got him in a white shirt over his red polo shirt, which I thought was quite funny. It's like, you need to be more formal. Quick, put this white shirt on. Job done.
And something about lights as well, then.
This is a couple of years old, but it just popped up the other day on either Lobsters or Hacker News, can't remember which. And somebody discovered that the same language is used for blinking lights in Half-Life and some of the older things like Quake. And there's actually a alphabet of the strength of the light and then a string that you pass to the same function that exists in both games. And then it tells you whether something is like essentially on at full, on off full, or, in graduated stages of brightness. And then how they pulse it would be going A, B, C, D all the way to Z and then back down to A again. And that's it going up and then going back down. And it's quite funny to see something as simple as a light flickering language in place. So I thought it was quite fun.
That is amazing. And I can see that there's a social media post saying that Valve reused the code for flickering lights in Half-Life Alyx 22 years after the release of the original Half-Life.
Is that the VR one that's terrifying?
Yeah, it's an amazing game. I mean, Half-Life itself is one of those, a bit like Blade Runner. It may seem not so original now, but it invented a lot of the things that so many other games have built upon since then. Really amazing game. I can't believe it's been 20 years.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Tailscale. go to tailscale.com/LNL. Tailscale is the easiest way to connect devices and services to each other, wherever they are. Everyone these days has a VPN as a sponsor, but Tailscale isn't like those. This isn't about hiding your browsing habits from coffee shop owners, and it's not about watching Netflix in another country. Tailscale is a proper VPN for connecting your devices securely. It's great for companies, and it's great for self-hosters. Loads of the late-night Linux family hosts use Tailscale because it gives you the power of WireGuard with a simple and quick setup. I got it up and running in a few minutes without having to open any ports. Tailscale lets you connect anything, anywhere. Provide connectivity to any resource for your organization, from dashboards to a Synology NAS or Windows file server, from self-managed DNS servers to software as a service applications. If you want it off the public internet, Tailscale will provide secure access. Tailscale's personal plan will always be free, so support the show and try Tailscale out for free today. You'll get up to 100 devices and 3 users for free at tailscale.com/LNL with no credit card required. That's tailscale.com/LNL. Something I've seen floating around recently is European-alternatives.eu. And this is European alternatives for digital products. We help you find European alternatives for digital services and products like cloud services and software as a service products. And they've got all sorts of stuff from VPS providers to domain name registrars, uptime monitoring services, file hosting services, browsers even. And they give Firefox an honorable mention as being open source. And for each category, they give you various ones that tell you where they are in the EU, whether it's Germany, Poland, France, whatever. And it tells you if they don't have an English website, which is handy. I cannot for the life of me think why this is doing the rounds lately, but here we are. If you just happen to want some stuff that's based in Europe rather than anywhere else, this is the site for you.
I've been trying to search for Crushing Eye of Sauron observance, but I'm not finding that anywhere.
Yeah. You realise that we've not mentioned it yet. I think we got away with it with this one just about.
Mentioned what? What are you talking about?
I don't know. My crushing despair, a sense of dread, that sort of thing.
I think I've broken through to the other side, actually. I'm still like, fuck it, whatever. Let it all burn.
Just because you're now in the Yorkshire Dales, which is not a nuclear target, you're fine, aren't you?
Actually, I'm pretty close to filing Dales.
Uh-oh.
Graham, WiseBlock Smart Cube Companion.
So I kind of into Rubik's Cubes. I'm not very good at it, but I can do it. Paul Hudson taught me how to do the Rubik's Cube back in Linux format days, and I still do it. I've got a load of cubes, and it's quite a nice distraction. So one thing that's happened over the last few years is there are a load of smart cubes, and GAN, one of the biggest makers of really nice cubes, makes a smart cube, but they all have the most horrendous apps that go along with them. So you have to create an account, and you typically use an app to randomize the cube, but mostly to kind of time and train your performance. So you can time yourself solving the cube, but also learn new moves and repeat them over and over and over again. It's quite useful, but the apps are horrendous.
Hang on, you're telling me that these things are motorized then? Like, will it like go and randomize it?
No, although there are some nice 3D print projects that you can motorize it with, but no, they simply know what state the cube's in.
Right.
So via Bluetooth, they'll connect to the app, and the app will know the state of the cube. So it'll time you solving it, and the app will typically update to show the state of the cube on the screen.
How does it randomize it though?
It shows you the moves to make to give a truly random setup so that you can test. Because when you're playing the cube quite a lot, you basically fall into the same old routine of randomizing it. So it's great to have something else tell you what the random. It's usually only 6 or 7 moves is enough to randomize the cube, and it will tell you which moves to make.
The only way I've managed to do a Rubik's Cube was to peel the stickers off it. But then even then, I ran out of energy, went, fuck it, I just don't care.
So can you do like the speed cubes with this then? Like you see those people just go, done.
Yeah, exactly. So people take it very serious. I'm barely in the minute threshold, so I'm really not fast at all in these things.
You can do it in a minute?
Yeah, and that's not very good.
Oh, shut up.
It's not very good by like competitive standards, but it's good by normal person standards.
I haven't learned any of the complex permutations that you need to learn to be able to really get fast. So the protocol that these cubes communicate with is closed. There isn't a standard. There's a few smart cube manufacturers, including Rubik, and none of them are the same. And they all talk to their own horrible proprietary apps. They're terrible. I can't say how bad they are because they're awful apps. So I've been looking for ages for an open source specification or reverse engineer of these things. There's a few weird app projects online that have reverse engineered those protocols. And this project is one that's reverse engineered the protocols, but put it into an embedded device it's actually an RAK 1907, which is some kind of small IoT board with a screen. This is an open source project that speaks to your smart cube. It has a screen on it, does everything that the app does, but it's so much better than the app. You can just put it on the side and then you can play your cube and you don't need to log into anything.
The enclosure has a real 3D printed vibe in this photo.
Yeah, so I've not made it. I'm actually more interested in having a look at the code and trying to create an app out of this because I just want to have something that's set up and times my cube solving and sets up the random thing and also saves my score because that's what I'm interested in.
It's like both of you and Will's wives got together and tried to design a Christmas present for the both of you. That one of you could solve the cube while the other one decoded the Bluetooth low energy protocol. This is fucking ridiculous.
I'm in.
It's a lot of, I don't know what to say. It's a lot of fun. You could pretend you're concentrating in meetings while secretly trying to solve the cube. There's a lot of things you can do with it.
More importantly, is there an equivalent for this for the Rubik's Magic? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Probably not, but it does support it supports like the pyramid, it supports like the Megaminx, the huge ones, the 2x2 ones. Many of them, I've got a lot of them, so I'll share a photo so you can see just how sad my collection is.
I think I could still solve the Rubik's Magic in under 20 seconds.
Wow.
Jesus Christ.
I still don't understand how that worked. How is it possible for the squares to move both? I just don't understand it.
I'm far too lazy. I think this is how I know I'm not like skilled in any special way. It's like, I'm like, nah.
Well, I'm told that Rubik's Cubes, it's not just logic or anything. You just learn how to do it. There's a certain technique. It's like cryptic crosswords. You look at the Times cryptic crossword and it just seems like fucking gibberish. But then someone explains how to do it, and then you can learn the skill of it. And then it's just relatively straightforward.
They're basically algorithms, yes. You see the state of the cube, and you know that there's a certain set of moves you can do to get yourself to a more ordered state from that. And the more algorithms you know, the more shortcuts you can take. So at the beginning, I think you need to learn like 4 or 5, and you can learn the cube by just learning 4 or 5 different sequences of moves. And then as you get more and more advanced, you can learn more. And then there's kind of conditions then, according to, you could branch off and do something one way if there's a certain pattern in one place, or go and do it another way. So it is a sequence of moves. But then the interesting part is getting faster, because then you kind of augment your knowledge of algorithms with more advanced algorithms and more conditions.
Well, I'll put this photo in the show notes because
yeah.
Not only does it show the Rubik's Cubes and everything, but in the background, you've got a really fancy joystick, which looks exactly like one that my neighbour had when I was a kid. But I could never afford anything that fancy.
That's a Competition Pro on top of my Amiga.
There you go. Yeah, and this was for the Amiga as well. Yeah.
Hang on, you've got Rubik's Cubes that don't have like cubic pieces on them.
Yeah, they're really interesting. They really bend your brain, because in fact the solution, the algorithms are identical, but the pieces in each place, instead of being different colours, are different shapes. So you just have to try and bend your brain around thinking that shape is blue, or whatever you happen to do. It's I don't know. As you get older, you try and, I don't know.
Okay, this episode is sponsored by Entroware. Go to entroware.com. Entroware sells computers with Ubuntu and Ubuntu Mate pre-installed. They've got a range of desktops, laptops, and servers, and most parts are configurable, so you can pick the CPU, RAM, and storage that's right for you. If you can't find exactly what you want, then do contact them, and they'll work with you on a bespoke solution that's perfect for your needs. They ship to the UK, Republic of Ireland, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. And if you do buy one of their machines, there's a little drop-down at checkout, and you can select Late Night Linux, so they'll know that we sent you. So go to entroware.com for all your Linux computing needs. On to a bit of admin then. First of all, thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to latenightlinux.com/support. And remember that for various amounts on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed of either just this show or all the shows in the Late Night Linux family. And you even get some episodes early. And if you want to get in contact, you can email show@latenightlinux.com. When I talked about the framework laptop, I mentioned some battery testing that I'd done and how Xfce had performed really badly and how I'd been threatening to do more extensive testing. Well, I have done some more testing. I have not completed my testing yet, but I've got some initial results and not quite conclusions, but interesting things I've seen, let's say. Now, let me just start by saying testing this shit is really, really hard. It's really hard. I'm not really sure the best way to do this. So what I've been doing is just my YouTube test. So I charge the laptop up completely. I set up a cron job to log the battery level every minute. I make sure it's full brightness. I start a YouTube 24-hour live stream, 1080p, and then I unplug the laptop and let it run all the way down. And then once I've charged it back up again and turned it on, I look at that text file and work out how many minutes from unplugging it to it turning off. And then I write down that number of minutes. I don't think this is necessarily the best test that you can do because really you kind of want to be testing more productivity stuff. Like, how often are you just watching full screen video at full brightness?
Quite often watching full screen video until I fall asleep.
Yeah, well, I watch full screen video and full brightness when I'm cooking and stuff. So maybe it's not that bad a test. But I feel like there must be some sort of productivity test. I know you can get proprietary software for Windows that will do this, like opening up spreadsheets and Word documents and editing them and stuff in a scripted way. There's got to be a way to do that in Linux. So if anyone knows, please let us know, show@latenightlinux.com. But for now, all I've done is just this YouTube test.
At the Ubuntu Summit, there was an open source project called WattWiser. I've not had a chance to look into it properly, but what they were doing was developing software to calculate the energy consumption of processors. And maybe that's something that could help in these situations.
Yeah, Wattwise it's called.
Ah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that. That probably needs to go into some scripts, I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, I decided to test Xfce, Mate, Plasma, and GNOME for now. And to cut to the chase, GNOME with Wayland generally performs the best.
Did it though? On your framework?
Yes.
Did it though? I'm looking at your numbers.
Right. On the framework, Plasma performed slightly better than GNOME with Wayland.
Say that again. Sorry, I didn't hear you there. My mic cut out. What?
Yes, and that's, I only tested Plasma with X11 because there was no Wayland session, and that performed slightly better. However, I think it cheated.
Oh.
I think despite me telling it, don't dim the screen when you start to get low on battery, I think it did that. And that's why it eked out a few more minutes.
Well, it's obviously more intelligent than the others, and it just went, you're being silly, and then fixed it.
Yeah, although I tried to replicate that. I don't know. This is part of why it's really hard, because you try and tell Linux, don't turn your screen off, especially when you're getting low on battery. Don't give me warnings and dim the screen and start going into super performance mode and shit like that. But then that's kind of part of it. Maybe, I don't know. That makes it difficult. But one thing that became very clear to me is the older the hardware you have, the less the desktop matters. Because I tried this with various machines, right? I tried it with a VivoBook, which is a 3rd gen i3. I tried it with an X270, which is a 7th gen i5, just before the Windows 11 cutoff. I tried it with a T480, which is a 8th gen i5, which is just about able to run Windows 11. And then I tried it with the framework, which is a Ryzen 7840U. And with the shitty old VivoBook, the results didn't differ in a sort of statistically significant way, I don't think. Xfce slightly worse. I think Plasma just about won, but otherwise it was pretty much all the same.
I wonder if that is down to processors having hardware decoding of the video stream. If that was the same test that you ran. Like, I wonder, if we found some way to automate doing, say, office productivity, would it change much, or, you know, how it would go on a different task that wasn't as intensive, maybe?
Yeah.
But I know what you mean. It's bloody hard to try and work these things out. I certainly wouldn't be volunteering.
Yeah. And also video decoding in full screen probably has very little to do with the window management in the end.
Yeah, I bet there's all sorts of optimizations for like zero copy and it coming straight out of the network card and straight onto video RAM with very little CPU involved at all.
But I think the one thing you could draw from this is the fact that if you do have on the same system, you've tried the multiple desktop interfaces, then that probably is a valid comparison locally for that one machine.
Well, one thing that became clear to me is that the newer the version of Ubuntu, the more battery you got. So with the T480, I tried with 2204, which was just installed already. And then I tried with 2410, the very latest Ubuntu. And with Xfce, I got like 25, 30% more, slightly less with the others. But there was a significant improvement in battery life, which tells me, which suggests to me that the newer version of Ubuntu can just take advantage of the hardware in a more efficient way. And what was interesting was that the newer you got, the more differences there were between the desktops. So with the framework, which is a really modern Ryzen, the differences were really quite stark. Xfce did really badly. And the difference between GNOME, X11 and Wayland was also quite marked as well.
Do you have any clue why Mint and Ubuntu, which I imagine is what the other one was, why they were so different?
Yeah, that's what I was going to get to. So my initial conclusion was that Xfce was shit, but I'm starting to think that it might be Ubuntu that is not quite brilliant. I'm not going to call it shit. I will never call it shit. But compared to the other ones, because I thought, let's just try Mint Xfce.
Is that using the same Xfce?
I think so, yes.
But it's not. It's still using X11, I presume.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
And that performed better, is the bottom line. It performed like roughly equivalent to Mate and Plasma, whereas Ubuntu lagged behind in almost every other test that I did, which kind of reinforces what I said about Mint Xfce in the first place, that it's just getting more love than Ubuntu is these days. But it's interesting that Plasma, I did a couple of tests with Wayland on 2404 and 2410, and it didn't do any better than X11 Plasma. It seems that they've not really done much optimization there versus GNOME, where they clearly have done a lot more optimization for the Wayland session versus the X11.
That's interesting. It'll be interesting to see then if they do a whole load that, if it's already slightly beating GNOME, will it be 5,000 hours of battery life?
Well, it's not always beating GNOME, is it? It's kind of hit and miss.
We'll see. We'll see how much it crucifies it by.
Yeah. Well, I was quite impressed with Mate. Mate seemed to really hold its own. Much better than Ubuntu did, at least.
From these results, I'm slightly disappointed that Wayland isn't doing better. And in some cases it is, but considering how old X11 is and how much we all know it's actually doing.
I guess it's had about 20 years of thrashing the life out of every single bit of it to make sure it works.
I suppose so. But I mean, it was never engineered to be this thing that Wayland supposedly should be.
Well, take the T480, which has got a really shit battery in it. GNOME X11 was lasting 44 minutes versus 53 minutes with Wayland. I mean, that is a significant improvement. I'm not good at maths on the fly, but that's about like 15, 20% or something.
Yeah, and I can see that it's in other results as well. It's been marginally better, but it's not very clear. I think it's a good test. I think these are really interesting results, and I think we should aggregate them with something else that's more window managery.
I'd be also very interested to see how Windows 10 or 11 and 11 do in these same tests.
Fuck that, quite frankly. I'm not doing that.
Because you're embarrassed with Linux.
No, I can't be arsed with it. It's so much easier to install Linux, isn't it? Versus fucking around getting all the Windows updates and everything, rebooting it 5 times and all that.
Oh, I don't disagree, but I think it would be quite telling to see how far behind or not the Linux kernel is on power management compared to Windows.
I should do that, really. Yeah. I mean, I should approach this more scientifically, really. But this has taken me, just testing with 5 laptops, took me about a week. Because you have to wait for it to charge up. You have to set it all up, let it do its thing, charge it back up again. And, you know, I just was constantly, I just had laptops going all the time. It was like a telly shop, just with like the YouTube video playing on like 5 laptops at once. It was really confusing at times.
Well, I don't know if you remember, but when I used to work for magazines, we'd sometimes do a feature where it'd be distro wars.
Yeah.
And we'd do all of these kind of performance metrics for like the top 10 or 15. And basically it was all 4 or 5 of us running tests for 3 weeks and putting them all in a spreadsheet. And it just, it's really, really hard. And then it's quite hard to draw proper conclusions from it because they're all so different. And there's never really a clear winner.
Well, something I was thinking about was it would be great to get people to volunteer to help us with this. If you've got a machine that you can dedicate to this and the time to do it, then do get in touch with us. As I said, show@latenightlinux.com. If you are willing to help, and I will devise, or maybe we could all together devise some more scientific way of doing this. And because I really am curious about this. Like, what is the best? Is there a clear winner? Does it depend on the hardware? I mean, my initial conclusion is yes. If you've got crusty old hardware, it makes no difference. The newer your hardware is, the more difference it makes. And GNOME with Wayland is generally going to give you the best results. Asterisk, unless you want to believe that Plasma is better.
Which would be correct.
Yeah. So yeah, get in touch with us if you're interested in helping with this. Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when it'll probably be news and stuff, but we'll have to see. Until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
I've been Graham.
And I've been Will.
See you later.